The goal of this video is to describe how to get up and running with a batch of RBT console runs against a set of champ data and then scavenge the results into an Access database. So I've got the workflow that we're going to go through on the left here, and on the right I have Windows Explorer. And just a little bit explaining about the structure here. In my D drive I've set up a folder called champ, and inside champ I've got everything that I'm going to use here. I've got various different softwares. I also have, under monitoring data, I have all of the topo data for 2011, 2012, 2013 champ. Okay, and it's really important that the data are in these this structure, and these were zipped up and sent to me in the same structure as Ignite, and then just unpacked here. So inside each folder is the survey geodatabase, the topo tin, and the water surface tin. Notice how there's no RBT input XML file here. It's just the topo data here. So back up at the top here, that's under monitoring data. And then the critical folder here is the RBT input output files. This has exactly the same folder structure, but inside here, instead of all the data, are actually the RBT input files. So I'm going to assume that you've got hold of the Ignite Cloud software, you've downloaded and unpacked all of the topo data, and now the first job that we want to do is to use the RBT input builder to build an input file for each of the RBT visits that we're going to run. So back up at champ, we have the RBT input builder here, and when I double click that software, I get to choose whether I want to generate a single RBT input file or build multiple. Now I'm going to assume here that we're going to run multiple input files, and what it's going to say here is I can get to choose whether I just build the input files or whether I actually build the input files and track them inside a batch database. So I'm going to go ahead and say yes to that, and the first thing that I have to do here is actually give the batch a name. So I'm going to call this demo batch, and I need to point where my batch database resides. And again, that's inside this dchamp folder. In my batch engine folder I've got my RBT batches. So go ahead and select that database, and then I want to select the parent folder for the monitoring data. So this is the folder that we just pointed to. I'll show you this here. dchamp monitoring data, and that's as far as I want to browse. Okay, and then I want to pick the root name of the RBT files that I'm going to be generating. Again, these are the RBT input files. And if I want to, I can turn on or off particular seasons here from 2011 through 13. So I can just create one field season or multiple. And then on the RBT side of things, I have to specify a few things here. Where do I want the output files of the RBT to go? And in this case, the way I've been running this is I set this up to put the RBT files in the same folder as the input files. So note here, I'm not choosing the monitoring data folder. My RBT artifacts and all the results are going to go in the input output. I do this deliberately so that the monitoring data folder is kept clean. It's as if it's the Ignite Cloud folder, and I don't want to pollute it with any temporary files or any RBT outputs. Okay, so I'm going to choose that, and this tool, because it's going to be looping over directories, it's actually going to for each visit, it's going to put the appropriate output folder. So what I mean by that is under champ, input output files, 2011. So when it's building the RBT input file for this visit, it's actually going to use this folder right next to the input file as the main output folder. Okay. Now you can choose where you put your RBT temp workspace. I've created one specifically in the champ folder because I want everything to be alongside each other essentially. And then I'm always calling the result file results.xml and log file log.xml. You can leave everything else alone. You'll obviously want to pick the correct RBT mode. In this case, I'm going to leave it as calculate metrics. I'm running on a desktop, so I'm going to bind against engine or desktop. If you're running against server, you can choose server. And I have ArcInfo installed. You will need ArcInfo for this tool, so leave that on advanced. Okay, and that's basically everything here. When I click OK, it's going to create it's going to loop through all the directories under monitoring data and create those input files. Okay, so I'm not going to run it because I've already done that. So I'll just show you the result. You've seen one or two of them already. So under input output, this time I go to 2012 John Day, pick a site, and in here you can see there's my RBT input XML. These are actually the results of a previous RBT run. Okay, so those won't be there for you at this point. Okay, so that's building the RBT input files. If you chose to generate a batch at the same time, in the batch engine database, you will have got a new batch created. So I have a few batches already in here created, but in this case I would have RBT demo batch, and inside that batch will be each of the visits. And so here are just the 20 benchmark sites that we have for RBT that have manual metrics calculated for them, but here's a batch that I created for all 2012 visits. Okay, and I can turn these batches on and off for running in the RBT, and I can either do that at the batch level, so if I want to run all 2012, I check that box, or if I want to run an individual visit, I can just come in and click run against the individual visits. Okay, you can ignore all the other fields here. You don't need to change anything else. It's just that checkbox that you want. Okay. Okay, so that's the batch database. You will need to make sure that you've got your RBT config set up properly. So in this case, the path to the RBT software is in dchamp RBT console, rbtconsole.exe. So again, I've got it all in the same dchamp folder. There's my RBT console, and there's my RBT console software. And you'll want to have the correct temp path in here, and you can leave the timeout at -1, and this will mean that the RBT will run as long as it needs to complete a visit. If you do want the RBT to time out after a certain length of time, you can put the time in here, I think in milliseconds, and the RBT will only run up to that limit and then bail and go to the next visit. So what you're trying to achieve here in this batch database is basically get all of the runs you want to run listed in a table, and then you are ready to run the RBT. And under batch engine, you're going to want to run this executable with this database as the command line argument. And I've basically created myself a little batch script that does that. So I've got the batch engine RBT engine exe with the database afterwards, and when I double click that, the RBT is going to run. I don't have any visits queued up, so this isn't going to do anything. But a DOS prompt will open and it will start processing the RBT. Okay, and again, just to reiterate, it's going to start processing each of those visits using the visit data from monitoring data and putting the outputs into the RBT input output files folder. Okay. Now, when you're done, scattered across this folder and in all the subdirectories, you're going to have all of these results.xml and log.xml files, as well as artifacts for all of your visits. So it's kind of painful to go and look in each of these results.xmls and actually kind of go down and extract the metrics you want. So what you want is, coming back to the workflow here, we've run the RBT console, you've got results, logs, and artifacts. You want to run the scavenger, which is going to go and search over your hard drive, finding all these result files and pull them into a metric database. Okay? So again, back in dchamp, I've got the result file scavenger folder here, and I've got my scavenger software. You need to pick the top level folder that you're going to search in. So again, D, I want to choose champ input output files, okay? And I want to do this recursively, so I want to go down through all the subfolders in this, and I want to look for any files that match result.xml. Obviously, if you've specified your result files having a different name, you'll want to change this pattern to match that. But I know right now mine are called results.xml. You can use asterisks or question marks as wildcards. You can choose whether you want to attempt to parse log files. I recommend doing this because you'll get all of the warnings and errors as well as status messages from the RBT, and they'll come in and get tied to the visits as well. And you want to choose your output database. dchamp, so I'll browse out to this, I'll just show you this. The scavengers alongside the software. And you get to choose whether you want to empty the database before processing or not, and then open the database afterwards when you're complete. When you click run, you'll get a progress bar, and this tool will attempt to scavenge through the folder structure, finding all of the input-output files. Now this takes some time, obviously, because you've got hundreds of folders and hundreds of files to search against. And so I'll just let this finish. And the end result is an access database that essentially has the same structure as the RBT XML file, but it's much easier to work with because you've got all of the RBT results in one database. So it's almost done. So it's encountered some errors, and that just means that there were items in some of the files that it wasn't able to understand, but we did actually get some results. So I'll just open the database here, and you can either browse using this form that comes up. This is just meant to be a quick way to get to all of the tables, or you can close that and actually just work with the tables directly here. The main table is visits, and there's one record in here for each RBT run that has each visit, has the path to the RBT input file that it ran. Notice how the path, because the folder structure is the same as Ignite, basically tells you the year, watershed, site name, and visit name of each run. The site name, for those that have it, is extracted. The field season is extracted, the visit name is extracted, and the RBT runtimes. You can actually kind of sort the visits by when they're run, and then if there's an artifacts geodatabase, it's put here. The units I don't think are populated, but then these are all of the site level metrics. Okay, I'll just show you a couple of them. Bankful channel capacity, cross-section bankful height. There's a couple of EMAP metrics, and then down here site gradient, site water surface slope, and then hanging off of that table are all of these other tables, and you can use the relationships tool to kind of see how the tables are all related. But an example would be the FOWEG, the from, the 2 points, and some of the runs that are in here predate this database, so they don't have all the information entered. But you'll see how these are tied using the same visit ID. The other important table in here is for each visit, there is a log file, and if it was able to find the log file and parse it, it will put a record in here for the log, and it'll tell you where the result file was. And then hanging off of each of these are the status messages for that particular RBT run. So here's an RBT run that has lots of status messages, and in fact it doesn't have any warnings or anything like that. It's just basically all of the status messages from the log file. So here's an RBT run that has a couple of warnings about the start and end of the thoweg, and then some status messages. So this is a way that you can quickly check if your visit ran correctly and has any warnings. Okay. So from here you can write your own queries and roll up the data as you need to pull out any kind of champ metrics you want. The site ones are easy because they're all in the visits table, but any kind of roll-ups from channel units and channel unit summary, you'll need to go into those individual tables. You'll notice that change detection are in here now, as well as budget segregations. That's one thing just to point out here. This whole workflow that we've been talking about so far is single visit analysis. So at the point that we build RBT input files, we are only building individual visits. So this is visit by visit RBT runs. We don't actually build any multi-visit input files, so we're not able to do change detection on any of these data. Now, if you want to go and edit the input file and make it a multi-visit input file, then when you scavenge, you will be able to retrieve the change detection results into the Access database. Okay, so that is the RBT batch workflow process from beginning to end.